Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, a show on India's national broadcaster Doordarshan about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations, and a key development and phenomena around the world that have an impact on India's rise. Viewers, this is a special episode where we are taking a close look at the phenomenon of spirituality and how it is linked to world peace. International peace and security is under tremendous pressure as we speak. And is there an alternative pathway that we may be able to find out of this dark tunnel through spirituality? This is the theme of the show. And to discuss this, I have with me a very, very esteemed guest who is joining us in the studio, Haji Syed Salman Chishty. He is the Gaddi Nashin, or the key holder of the holiest Sufi shrine of the Indian subcontinent, which is in Ajmer Sharif. He's a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador and a voice for harmony and for unity, not just in India, but on the world stage. Salman Chishty, welcome to Indian Diplomacy.
Adab, namaskar, lots of blessings and duas from Ajmer Dargah Sharif.
Salman Chishty, now we are, in an era marked by a lot of wars and violence. The kind of conflicts that are raging around the world, the carnage that we are witnessing, violence, brutality on television screens, the whole world seems to be moved by it, but is helpless and is not able to stop all this, bloodshed that we are witnessing. So international peace, world peace is, something like almost like a dream or an unfulfilled reality as we are living through very turbulent times. So I'd like your thoughts as a Sufi practitioner and a thinker on these matters. What do you think is ailing the world as we witness it right now, and what is the fundamental deficiency or lack because of which you think we are going down this dark path?
Well, greeting of peace and adab and salam to all of you, especially all the viewers. I think what is happening in the 21st century, when we see and look around the world where we have access to the different parts of the world and the challenges that is happening. And if we go, let's say about 800 years back or 1,000 years back, we could see and read that there would be more of intolerance, more of misunderstanding among the communities and among the society. So in those eras, what did the mystics, what did the Sufi saints, and what did the gurus did? They reach out to the society, they reach out to the common man, and they inculcated the values of peace, compassion, unity, harmony, and celebrating the diversity that exists, which has always existed throughout ages in our society. It was never a bone of contention. The diversity used to be the strength. I think in today's time, if we can bring out all those ancient spiritual ethos, which were focused on uniting the society on the foundational perspective and aspect of peace, unity, and harmony, and celebrating and cherishing the diversity. The leadership of the world must learn and respect from each other about the culture, tradition, and the unique aspect of oneness. That is also one of the aspects of the Chishtiya philosophy is Wahdatul Wujud, which is oneness of being. And likewise in India, the ancient tradition of our Bharat has always celebrated the values of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakum, that the whole world is one family. And when we talk about Advaita and Vedanta, it's about non-duality, which is in sync with the philosophy and the serving of with unconditional love. As one of the teachings of Hazrat Khaja Garib Nawaz, Moinuddin Chishti, whose shrine is in Ajmer Sharif in India, which has a worldwide impact and a symbol of unconditional love.
So presumably those traditions of the past are no longer being sufficiently upheld and practiced because there's a deficiency we can see, right? I mean, maybe generally we tend to focus more on materialistic factors in analyzing even why there is so much violence and conflict, right? The realist scholars of international affairs would say that something is wrong with the balance of power. Some countries have become stronger, others, and therefore there's a clash. The Marxists will say this is because of conflict between different classes and different types of ideologies, capitalism, socialism, communism, all those. And then there are many other such explanations which mainly are based on the predominance of material factors. But you are emphasizing something else, which is usually not in the domain of the social sciences, but should come in. And that's why we are having this episode in a way to push for that kind of a thinking. So the non-materialistic philosophy, Sufism included, most of them talk about, like you said, the non-duality, right? But then if you see in the real world of politics, international politics, it's all about us versus them, and the othering of the the enemy, and out of which then you push for violence and for attack and counter attack. So let's talk a bit about this factor about unity and love, which you are professing, but seems to be in short supply in the world of real politics. So what is it that we can do at this level to infuse that consciousness of oneness and to reduce this sense of otherness?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that one of the philosophies and the teaching that has always focused on serving all as one. In the Quranic verses, Al-Khalq wa ya lillah, which always have focus on treating the whole creation as God's family. And that's why the mystics and the saints in the earlier past, and also in the present time, when they are out in the public domain, in the public service, with the spiritual consciousness, they look at the world as they're serving the Creator. One of the important philosophy is about when we intend to be close to the Creator, the Khaliq, we have to be in service towards the creation, which is the makhluk. And with that aspect of serving in today's time, when you talked about different aspect of us and them, we have seen there is a change of trend. And since I've been representing India and Ajmer Sharif from last 20 years in more than about 60 to 70 countries, and we have engaged with the spiritual leadership to the head of states as well. But what we have observed over the past few years, that there is a shift in the policy that the countries, especially India and other countries, are also now focusing on outreaching with the soft power initiatives of the respective countries. So we have seen in the past decade that how India has specifically, enhanced the outreach through our soft power diplomacy as well. I think this is very important, that the aspect of compassion and oneness must be through culture, art, dialogue, and people-to-people connect. I think when we bring out the human aspect of the around the different parts of the world and the human society, the leadership also pays heed to such kind of people-to-people interactions and initiatives.
So what you are saying is that action is what can change things. I mean, generally people are also despondent, and they think that there is a big structural dynamic, and because of which all these conflicts are happening, and nobody individually can make a big difference. And generally even social movements are considered to be not so effective, because they say it's all about military power and economic might and all these things that are ultimate determinants of outcomes. But you're talking about other things. Now, on the work of the Ajmer Sharif Dargah also, it's a big unifying force for the whole subcontinent and beyond, right? I mean, and there is a connection between the Sufi traditions of India, which are upheld and led by your institution, and which also emanate worldwide. And you mentioned that you have been traveling and representing India in so many forums also. So let's talk a bit about that aspect and how the outside world views India on this account. The fact that we have managed diversity so successfully, and the fact that we are the fountainhead of so many traditions that have got universal wisdom that is for the universal well-being. So let's talk a bit about that aspect and how you think India can play a bigger role to lead the world to a safer and a more secure place.
Well, the important aspect that we have talked about is, and especially when being born and brought up in Ajmer Sharif, of course, it's a privilege and honor, but at the same time, it is a sacred trust. Likewise, the spiritual tradition that we are born into, it is a sacred trust upon all of us. And from last 800 years, Ajmer Sharif has been the center space for the Chishti Sufi order as the blessed seat across Indian subcontinent and around the world. And the message of Hazrat Khwaja Garib Nawaz has always been of oneness. It is an important aspect that Gharib Nawaz has asked us to develop the 3 attributes of nature into your being if you want to be close to the Creator. And what are these 3 aspects of nature? Sun like grace, river like generosity, and earth like hospitality. Because these 3 aspects of nature never make any differences upon whom they are being served. So when we develop those 3 aspects into our daily life, then we will not make any differences upon whom we are serving and whom we are engaging. And that's truly enable the spirit of oneness. So Ajmer Sharif, the message has been very clear, because people from all faith, all traditions, all different parts of the world, they visit Ajmer Sharif for the moment of peace. It is the peace of heart and tranquility that has been experienced in that. So it is that aspect of experiential spirituality that has been the benchmark of Ajmer Sharif. Likewise, when we see from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, the Sufi dargahs, the places of meeting have always been stood out in serving with unconditional love. When we talked about the gurudwaras that we have in India, when we talk about the different mandirs that we have in across India, then we talk about different churches that we have in India, they are all revolving around human service. I think that is one of the greatest aspects, how India has always cherished, accepted, and celebrated the diversity that the world knows today and sees today. So this is something very, very unique, and also the world looks up to India as how this diverse nation celebrated with 1.4 billion Indians together. Now, when we look at around the world, and when you talked about the different aspect of people are imposing the leadership of different countries and us and them, I think this is very important to see that how we, in the ancient past, how India was known as a Vishwa Guru, as people from around the world would come to India. What was the power? There was no military power, there was no economic power in terms of today's understanding, there was no materialistic impact in those years, but the spiritual impact, which made a mark of hundreds and hundreds of years across around the world. That is something very important, and our society was developed and built up upon those spiritual ethos. And that was one of the greatest strengths that the world appreciated, the world came together with. And I think today we need to get back to those, our ancient philosophy of serving and bringing the world together as one family.
Right. Values, really there is a shortage of values, and we are struggling on that front, and that's very well said. Now, you also mentioned extremism and hate, and this is one area on which Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also been emphasizing that, you know, the Sufi tradition is the perfect antidote to the political forms of religion, and which have been used to manipulate minds and to put people on the path to commit violence. So what is the work of the Ajmer Sharif Dargah, and also of the philosophy that it stands for, in terms of countering that? Because extremism and fundamentalism have become major issues in the world, and are actually fueling a lot of the insecurity and the wars that we are seeing around the world, right? So how do you take people out of the cycle of revenge, hate, vendetta, and wanting to settle scores with the other side, as they put it, and that then motivates? Even they say that we are fighting for justice, they say we are fighting for our dignity, right? But they're using means which are quite harmful to the whole of humanity. So let's talk about how we can counter violent extremism, and what is it that is missing in our current approach. Not just I don't mean in any particular country, but globally. You find that typically they say, okay, counter terrorism, we have to use military force, we have to win the people's hearts and minds and all that. But what is it that may be extra which is needed to finally overcome this menace?
Different saints of the Chishti order, along with the different saints of the Bhakti order, they have come together and always learned from each other. We know how the teachings and the sayings of Baba Farid were incorporated into the holy Guru Granth Sahib by Hazrat Baba Guru Nanak. So, and we know that the yogis from the Gorakhnath Math would come together and sit with Baba Farid and learn the breathing practices from each other. There are so much of text and literature available in this interactive descriptions and learning from each other. I think it is that aspect that we can open to the world by sharing these teachings at the highest platform. And one of the important aspects that Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has showcased right from the time that when we organized the World Sufi Forum in New Delhi in 2016, there were Sufi leaders from across 19 countries from around the world in Delhi at the Vigyan Bhavan, where the opening speech, which was delivered by Prime Minister Modi for 40 minutes, has shared the teachings and the wisdom of right from Khaja Gharib Nawaz to Nizamuddin Aulia to Hazrat Amir Khusro. So there has been a very, very important initiative that the teachings of the Sufis and the saints and the Bhakti tradition should be shared. And this is how the uniting and the factor of oneness have been amplified through initiatives by cultural diplomacy, through initiatives by academic interaction, and also when we have the religious fair like the Urs of Ajmer Sharif, where we get about 1 million people coming from different parts of the world, from different faith traditions, and celebrating that huge ocean of unconditional love. And 1 million people, when they go back to their respective countries, they go back to their respective states as an ambassador of peace. And that's what we personally engage in Ajmer Sharif, as along with the Khuddam-e Khaja Gharib Nawaz, the serving community in Ajmer Sharif, that whoever steps in, when they leave, they don't just leave as a seeker, but they should leave as an ambassador of unconditional love. And I think that is something which has to be actively pursued, both into the academic aspirations as well as globally when we engage on behalf of India. That would be a very, very important aspect. As recently, I think last year, during the Republic Day celebration, when the chief guest was French President Macron, when he was in India, and after the 26th of January, the Republic Day celebration, just before leaving, the French President Emmanuel Macron visited the Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia Dargah. And I think that was a very important initiative. Our External Affairs Minister, Excellency Jaishankar Sahab, accompanied, and I think the President stayed in the Dargah for about 1.5 hours.
Wow.
He was there inside. He experienced the silence. He experienced the Sufi music, the music of Amir Khusro Qawwali, and the Chishti hospitality. And I think that made huge headlines across Europe. And also it gave us a significant answer to radicals and also extremists that in India, at a specifically Sufi Muslim shrine, French President paid a visit and experienced the Sufi hospitality right in the heart of India at the New Delhi.
That was had a huge impact, especially in the Western countries. Salman Chishty ji, the issue of young people and youth is always at the forefront because they will inherit this planet. You are talking about unconditional love, and generally the worldly approaches to international relations never use such terms. But maybe we have exhausted the toolkit of the old methods, and maybe we need to go back, like you're saying, to our saints. So young people, how can we, and you engage with millions of them through the Ajmer Sharif Dargah, and also you travel abroad and represent India and talk to young people abroad as well. You are also creating connections between shrines here and shrines in other parts of the world. How are young people responding to your message? I tend to be optimistic. I'm an academician and I engage with young people also. I tend to, despite all the dark clouds of war and violence and insecurity worldwide, I look at the younger generation. I feel like if we infuse the right kind of values, all the ones you mentioned, the non-dualism, service, humility, and submission to higher grace, those sort of things, if we can inculcate, maybe it will change things organically from below, because most of the the mainstream approaches to peace are based on imposing it from above. So top down approaches are not yielding any success. So let's talk about the youth and what we can do to mobilize them as vehicles for peace.
Well, youth has, of course, been very engaging. When we talked about the spiritual traditions, we have traveled and represented India in different academic circles, right from Indonesia, previous to last year. the G20 summit that was in Bali. And then, of course, when it came to India, I think that brought a great deal of awareness about how soft powers and the diplomatic initiatives can engage the youth. And we can talk about the interfaith dialogue. We can talk about, we can engage on spiritual ethos. Because yes, religion sometimes put off the youth because of the complication that has been created by the so-called preachers, the so-called who have been not themselves well versed about the specifics and details, how to bring together communities and have an engaging dialogue. But when you talk about the spiritual ethos, when we organize many events across around the world on behalf of India, one of the memorable events that we did in Washington at the Smithsonian's, where the Qawwals of Ajmer Sharif presented the Qawwali at the Smithsonian, and it was completely a packed house. They were full of youngsters there, all the Washington DC, the Indian diaspora, along with the Americans. They were part of, they came to listen to that spiritual music. All the language was Hindwi, Indian language, and the language was Persian and Urdu, and the Kari Boli and the poetry of Amir Khusro, which was part of the rendition, but still it was packed. I think, and then another event we did at the United Nations in 2013 when our permanent representative at the United Nations at the Indian mission was His Excellency Hardeep Singh Puri Sahab. That's time when India got the UN Security Council chairmanship. The presidency of the UN Security Council was given to India in the month of November, if I remember correctly. One of the days we celebrated the message of unconditional love at the United Nations, because that was also the year of 800 Urs of Khaja Gharib Nawaz. So we celebrated that along with MEA and the initiative through Ambassador Hardeep Singh Puri Sahab and the Indian mission at the UN, which was attended by almost 120 representatives, ambassadors of different countries at the UN. I think it was something which was very memorable. And the Deputy Secretary General actually in his speech shared the last sermon of Khaja Gharib Nawaz, the English translation where Gharib Nawaz talked about love all and hate none. May talk of peace will take you not. May talk of peace will not take you far. May talk of religion will not take you far. So be surcharged with peace and joy and carry them wherever you go, wherever you are.
What an inspiring message. Salman Chishty ji, last word. Prime Minister Modi recently quoted Hazrat Amir Khusro and said that, Khusro had said that there was no nation greater than India. No language, more advanced than Sanskrit and so on. And he was, of course, Hindvi, the composite language of the subcontinent. So India's greatness, India's contribution to world peace, we do a lot of things in the concrete forms like peacekeeping and the United Nations system, like you mentioned, so a lot of initiatives, but also at the deeper level, you mentioned the Vishwaguru idea. So let's conclude by reflecting on what is the essence of the Indian ethos in your view and why that is good for the world.
It is based upon the human consciousness. Indian ethos has always taken care of the human consciousness and the existence of human society as one family. If we can bring that consciousness to our initiatives, to the world leadership, because this has to start at the time when the younger generation, they are into their academic understanding, learning through the academic curriculum, to the schools, to the universities. That's why one of the aspects of us in engaging in universities like Harvard University, across India, different university, and the major universities around the world, because it is that spark, that light, if we can inculcate during that point of learning of our youth who will be the future leaders, the president and prime ministers who come out from this university, if you can inculcate that ethos, where tomorrow when these leaders would be in the position of making policies and decisions which will impact millions of people around the world, not only in their respective countries. I think that would be really influential and impactful as a part of sharing that grace of acceptance and serving with unconditional love that has always been part of the Indian spiritual ethos. At Ajmer Sharif, we always have been engaging into that outreach program. Since last 20 years, it is that insight that the world is coming to Ajmer Sharif, people from different faith are coming to Ajmer Sharif. But what are our outreach programs? So that was reaching out to the universities and reaching out to the platforms like United Nations, UNESCO, even African Union in Ethiopia. So in over 7 continents, we have engaged with the diplomatic institutions to the spiritual and the sacred places, right from the leadership in Middle East as well. So I think if we can really amplify that from the campuses, from the universities, and also engage in a deeper manner, that would really portray what Indian ethos has always stood of oneness, and that loving kindness which is missing today, and people are heartbroken. And the spiritual tradition is always taking care of the human heart.
Right.
And when we engage in that kind of initiative, as in Ajmer Sharif, we have grown up with listening and sharing these couplets of serving, which says, कि तेरा दयार है दार सलाम या ख्वाजा, तजल्लियां है नई सुबह शाम या ख्वाजा, न फिक्र में न गमे जाम तेरे मस्तों को, तेरी एक निगाह से चलता है काम या ख्वाजा. So it is the abode of peace.
Yeah,
the abode
absolutely.
of peace that we are, the land that we are born in. So it is that abode of peace and that message that goes across. And when we share this divine tajalliyat, the divine showers of unconditional love, so those who have been intoxicated in spiritual ecstasy have no fear and no sorrow. The spiritual ethos of India has always bring the aspect of hope to the world. As Maulana Rumi says, Baza Baza, Haranche Hasti Baza, Sad bar gar tauba shikasti baza, idarga ima na umidi neest, idarga ima umidast, umidast, umidast. Come, come, come. Whoever you are, come. Even if you have broken your vows of repentance 100 times, come. Our doors are not the doors of despair. Our doors are the doors of hope, hope, and hope.
Wow.
And if this we can put together with the leadership, I think they are the one that especially the youngsters, the influencers, people who have influence among the social media, if they can bring this aspect of spirituality and hope, we can overcome the major challenges of the world today.
What an enlightening discussion we've had with Syed Salman Chishty, the Gaddi Nashin of the Ajmer Sharif Dargah. Viewers, this unconditional love, service to humanity, and opening your hearts to others, all these may sound like unrealistic in the big bad world out there, but let's think about alternatives, because all the mainstream approaches to conflict resolution, peacekeeping, peace building, most of them are failing. So maybe it's time for us to go back to the saints, as our guest was saying today, go back to their teachings and also to practice what they have been saying since time immemorial. So all our traditions contain this wisdom, and we need to put it out and to make sure that young people especially believe in this alternative pathway. Let me thank Syed Salman Chishty for coming to our studio and for sharing wise words with all of us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Adab, and bahut duaon ke saath. Thank you so much.
Viewers, spirituality is not so far removed from international relations. Maybe we are suffering from a deficit of spirituality, and it may be time to bring it back for us to really reap the peace dividend that has been promised to us but is not being delivered. So maybe it's time for us to think out of the box, and this is a clarion call for especially the young people to come out with open hearts and minds and to embrace the other, so that the Indian ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, is finally realized. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.